Howdy y'all, with Lex Lives. I think it's time to play a little 7 Days to Die. Alright. So I am headed to a clear mission. I went ahead and fetched my truck and my bike in between episodes, I think. I'm pretty sure last episode ended sometime around me losing my truck and then trying to go get it on foot in the middle of Horde Night, which didn't work out well. So I did get that back, and then I actually recorded earlier, and then noticed that I had run out of space on my hard drive, and I don't know how long I was talking to myself, so I thought I'd just go ahead and start this episode back over. It happens occasionally. So, yeah, we didn't get to play any D&D this week. The one guy was gone off to a concert, so, and then the other guy said he'd be late, although he didn't tell me why, so I don't know. But yeah, so no D&D. Then we had Thanksgiving. So much food. We normally have, like, extended family members all get together for Thanksgiving, but for whatever reason this year we did not, and so but they still seem to have made as much food as we normally make, which is a lot of food. We still have so much Thanksgiving left over. It's ridiculous. We'll probably be eating Thanksgiving leftover tomorrow as well, which is fine with me because I love Thanksgiving leftovers. And then we crap, where's the door? And then we ended up, they said, ooh, we want to watch a movie. Oh, dang it, I failed that mission quick. Wow. And so they all came downstairs here and then promptly proceeded to ignore that we were trying to pick out a movie. And I'm just like, well, what do you guys want to watch? And then nobody says anything. And then I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll flip through some of the different streaming services we use and see if there's anything. And nobody says anything. And then I don't even remember what she wanted to watch, but niece wanted to watch something. I'm like, yeah, well, I don't want to watch that. And then she said she wanted to watch The Black Phone, and I'm like, well, I don't want to watch The Black Phone. And my sister said, yeah, I'm not watching a horror movie. And then my nephew was like, we should watch the original Lorax. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to watch the Lorax. And he's like, yeah, but the original Lorax. So I can only assume he saw some meme video about it. I'm like, yeah, I'm not watching the Lorax. So we did, I did eventually just start watching Slumberland because nobody would pick anything. My sister was like the only one half paying attention, and she just kept like looking up the rating information on the movies that we were looking through to see if there was anything that, you know, what was in the movies as, I don't know, on whether or not we could watch them with the kids. And, but she never made an opinion on whether or not we should watch it, just what was in it. I hate that. I hate that they're all like, yeah, we should watch a movie together. I'm like, okay, what do you want to watch? I don't know. Well, then I don't know what to do for you, man. I suggested we watch like Nightmare Before Christmas or Muppet Christmas Carol, but again, nobody put forth an opinion at all last night, other than me saying, I mean, no, that's not true. They did put forth opinions, but they weren't serious opinions, right? I think maybe my sister wanted to watch Arthur Christmas, but she just kept saying, oh, look, there's Arthur Christmas on the different streaming services. But she never said that's what she wanted to watch, just that she saw it. And I've never seen that one. I have no idea what it is. But yeah, so we ended up watching Slumberland, which is a new Jason Momoa movie where he plays a creature in Slumberland. It was pretty good. I did have to laugh a little bit because as we were watching it, the main character's name is Nemo, and they're going into Slumberland, right? And so I'm like, what are the chances that this movie is based off of that old Nintendo game, Little Nemo in the Dream World, or whatever it was called? So my sister looks it up, and she's like, oh, they're both based off the same comic strip. I'm like, oh, that's funny. But yeah, it was pretty good. I actually thought they did a pretty good job with it. I mean, I don't know anything about Little Nemo, so take what you will from that. But I thought the movie itself was enjoyable. For the most part, I can separate my shows from, like, I don't think that an adaptation necessarily has to be identical to a book series unless you're claiming it's going to be close to the book series. And as long as your story is good, I'm fine with it. So, you know, I hate the adaptation of Wheel of Time because they spent a lot of effort telling people it was going to be as close to the books as possible, and then when it came out, it's nothing like the books. And then, you know, the showrunner's like, yeah, I made a bunch of changes just to make the book readers mad. Then why did you spend months saying it was going to be close to the books? Why did you say things like, here's these little, what they call vignettes of the lore that we're using in the show, and the vignettes are identical to the book series, and we've got experts on set who are super familiar with the book content to make sure that our scripts are as close as we can get, you know, because it is an adaptation and we do have to shorten things down to the plots of the books. And then you find out that things like one of the characters can speak with wolves in the book series, and you find out the showrunner was like, you know, Game of Thrones did wolves. I think we should maybe have him speak to bears. That's not the kind of adaptation that I'm okay with. You know, you go like, I feel like they don't need to go to all 6 of these towns along their trip. That would be too much for our budget and too much screen time. We should combine a couple of the, you know, 3 of the towns together and combine those instances into one location. That's the kind of adaptation I can understand. Here's a side character who, while the story is enjoyable, doesn't actually, you know, pertain to the main plot. We could probably not put that character in the show. I can understand that kind of adaptation. But you don't go taking one of the main characters in the book and be like, he was wolves in the book, we should make him with bears in the show. What? Why would you think that would be okay? Hey, you know how Cyclops shoots lasers out of his eyes in the comics? Well, on the show, I think he should skate with ice skates. I'm just... Anyways, Slumberland, I know nothing about Slumberland or Little Nemo. I didn't really play the Nintendo game, so I don't remember it. But the show itself was good, and you know, I can take it for what it is. So I guess the big thing, there's two big things I want to talk about. I don't know if I can make it to both of them in one episode. But the first one I want to talk about is this book series, Ash and Sand. I've talked about it a little bit before. So I just it was on this book list of the top 20 current fantasy series that are amazing. It was number 20, and but it was on my Kindle Unlimited, so I could basically read it for free. I mean, you pay for Kindle Unlimited, but then you can check out as many books as you want. And so it's basically like Amazon's version of a library. And so I got the book. I got the first book. I read through it. Spoilers for the series. The first book is pretty good. I enjoyed the storyline. I liked what they were doing with the characters. And basically the book is split in half. I say that it's not like two separate books, but the like one chapter would be about Ruka, and then the next chapter would be about Kale, kind of thing. Right. So it's not a. Oh, dude, where am I going? It's not a, half the book is about this guy and then the second half is about this guy. No, they were intermixed. Apparently, and I didn't notice, at the start of most of the chapters is a date. And so the things happening to Ruka are in the past, and the things happening to Kale were in the air quotes present. And so I didn't realize they weren't concurrent stories. And so, because Ruka and Kale do not meet each other in the first book. So the fact that their stories are taking place at different times doesn't mean anything. I would like... Listen, I can do this, guy. Really, I can. I can do it, alright? I will kill these zombies. Maybe. I failed like the last 4 times I've tried this, but I can do it. Really, I can. So basically Ruka's story is that he was an outcast, corrupt priestess, basically got his mother killed and his father killed, and so he eventually raises an army and comes against the corrupt religious organization near where he lives and wipes out that particular branch of the religious organization to get revenge for the death of his mother. And then once he's had his revenge, he doesn't know what to do with himself, so he gets on a boat, he sails away, and then it gets weird. And this confuses me, and I don't understand how the time in the books work, because Ruka tells the guy who helped him raise the army that he's been gone for 2 years. And in the second book, he reiterates that he was gone for 2 years. But they also mention that he was gone for 20 years. And it's been 20 years. Maybe this is the problem I'm having, is that he was gone for 2 years, and then it's been... So this is the problem. All right, I think this might be the problem. Is that the second book is like almost... It has the same characters, and they're based off of what happened in the first book. But it's so different from what went down in the first book that it's confusing, because it turns out Ruka went to this place twice. 3 times. And in the first book, he only went there once. And so maybe that's why I find it so confusing. But basically, right, like I said, so then Ruka gets on a boat at the end of the book. He sails away, and then he comes back 2 years later, and he's like, yeah, so I found paradise, and I want to gather everyone together, and we're going to conquer paradise and take it from the people who currently have it. And so I'm like, okay, so Ruka is pretty crazy and violent and not a good guy in the first book necessarily. And so I totally see him gathering his people to take these islands to transplant his people from the horrible conditions in which they currently live to the paradise-like conditions he sees the islands as. Um, so the other character that they follow in the book is Kale. Kale is the prince of one of these island kingdoms, and Kale's story is a little weird. Kale doesn't know what to do with himself. He's the fourth prince. He doesn't have a point. Like he's too low on the totem pole to be used for marriage, I guess. I don't know. To cement an allyship or something. I don't know. But he thinks he's going to be in the military. His father tells him he has to go to this monastery. While he's at the monastery, he unlocks abilities, mostly astral projection and some energy manipulation, like the energy of the world manipulation kind of thing. And then when he comes back, he had fallen in love with this princess, and so when he comes back, they hook up, and then he tells his father that he's going to marry this princess, and that they've hooked up. And the father's like, "What have you done, idiot? Even though I told you that this princess was from a kingdom that didn't matter, and that we couldn't have an allyship, an alliance with them. Secretly, she was betrothed to your brother. He doesn't even know about it, and it's going to cement the alliance between our two families and our two kingdoms." And I'm just like, well, why didn't you tell him that? Like, I don't know. And so then he's like, well, you know what? It's important to our kingdom that the two of them marry. So just go ahead and have them marry, and I just won't ever say anything. And the father's like, well, we can't have that, because now you've messed it all up. So we're going to turn you into a eunuch, and that way, if a child comes from your hooking up, then we can say, oh no, it's the brothers because he's a eunuch. And so, of course, he doesn't want that. And then there's this guy there from another kingdom area, totally, another continent. And he's like, instead of that, why don't we send him to the university where I'm from, and then he can go study there for a few years, and then that way when he returns, no one can say that there was any improprieties, and because he's gone to this university. And so they're like, okay, we'll do that. When they get to the university, it seems like it's less of a university and more of a church. And so he joins this church for this other god, which just allows him to unlock more power from... Wow, that was a terrible... And so, then at the end of the book, he gets word that, well, I think they're going to kill him, and so he has to fight his way out. And then, he gets word that his islands are under attack. And so he decides he'd better go and, save his family, right? And so that's what he does. Or that's the end of the first book. So in the second book gets super confusing, because the second book then plays out the 22 years for Ruka that are just like side mentioned in the first book. And so it plays out the 2 years where he goes to the islands, although I'm pretty sure they said it was longer than 2 years. But it gets really weird because they're like, yeah, so he hung out with Kale's father during those 2 years, and he knew Kale, and he played with Kale and babysat Kale, and he was a really good guy in book two. Like in book one, he's bloodthirsty, looking for revenge, looking for the death of the people who caused the death of his mother and father. And he'll do anything to get that. And then the second book, he's like, "Oh yes, I learned all the science that this island kingdom could teach me, and I became best friends with the king, and I tried to save the prince's mother when she got poisoned, and all this stuff." And I'm just like, this is like a totally different character. Um, and so then he finishes. He goes to the monastery where Kale went. Now they made a big deal about Kale being able to um, complete this thing where he could see these runes. They had a test. There were runes that covered an entire room, and then their test was to read the runes and then go in the next room and write the runes without a mistake, without being able to leave the room. And so he astral projected to be able to do it, right? Whereas Ruka's oh crap. Ruka has eidetic memory, and so he remembers everything he's ever seen, right? And so he does it apparently, although they made such a big deal about how long it had been since anyone had managed it before. Well, it turned out it wasn't that long because Ruka did it. Like, I feel like you acted like it was way longer, and then Ruka just does it, and nobody mentions that. Like, I don't understand. Um, and and so, anyways, yeah, the second book just is kind of weird to me, and it's very different from the first book, and um, Kale's barely in it until the end. Mostly, he's just collecting his army to take back his island kingdoms from the invaders. But the invaders are Ruka and his people. And they're not invaders. It's a secret plot by Kale's father to seize control over all the islands. Because Kale's father can see the future. And so he sees a difficult future where Ruka and Kale's people unite as one and become a major world power. And so he's done everything he can to make that future come to pass. But in doing so, he had Kale fake invade and seize the royal family, which is Kale's, you know, three brothers and their family members. And so at the end of the book, Kale shows up and with all his new superpowers and has a huge fight with Ruka. And Ruka's like, "Hold on, your father's coming. We'll discuss this." And he's like, "We'll discuss nothing, barbarian. You will give me back my, my family's kingdom. I've seen the dead bodies." Basically, they had a problem with disease because Ruka's people are from a different area than the Islanders, and so Ruka's people and the Islanders have cross pollination of diseases, whatever that's called, and it's far deadlier for the Islanders, and so Ruka's trying to make medicine to prevent it, but it mostly affects the very young and the very old. And so there's a lot of graves for the very young and the very old. And so that's all Kale sees, is that they've been killing children. But I mean, they weren't really killing children. The children were dying from this disease, right? And but anyway, so Kale attacks, and then Kale's father shows up. Kale kills his father accidentally, and then Ruka kills Kale. Uh, Although Kale might be like a astral projection ghost now that his body's dead. I don't know. And so I haven't read book 3 yet, but book 2 was so divorced from what went down in book 1 that it almost feels like a different story, and it wasn't as good. And so, like, how did this make it on the best series, fantasy series list? There's no real, other than for whatever reason they have superpowers. And I'll be honest, the superpowers have nothing to do with the storyline. There is no part in the story where their superpowers matter. They just have them, basically. Uh, it's so weird. Where the heck am I supposed to go? Shut. That's where I came from. Shut. Oh, here we go. But yeah, I gotta finish book 3 on that yet. But so far, I liked book 1. I'm not a big fan of book 2. Oh. And then the other thing I want to talk about, we'll try to squeeze this in here. I watched the new Wednesday show, based off of the Addams Family. It's okay. It's not very good. Um, it was disappointing because I like the Addams Family for the most part. I haven't seen the new animated movies that came out, but when I was a kid, I used to watch like the Addams Family, the original Addams Family, the black and white one, reruns, and obviously because I'm not 90 years old, um, and jeez, dude, you almost died because you couldn't shoot straight. And so, um, I went into this. Wednesday's my favorite character from the Addams Family, right? I love the movies from the '90s. I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen them. They might be terrible, but I remember really liking those movies. The ones with Christina Ricci as Wednesday Addams. And so I was really looking forward to this series, and it's nothing like the Addams Family. It was so disappointing. It was. This is the way I describe it. It was Nancy Drew does a Scooby Doo mystery. No, let me repeat that. It was Goth Nancy Drew does a Scooby Doo mystery. Spoilers for Wednesday. It was not great. I think the problem is, and we'll just start off with what I think the problem is. I think the problem is that the Addams Family series is based around, right, the creepy, spooky undead. I mean, I don't think they're all undead, but none of them might be undead. No, that's not true. The Thing, and probably Lurch. Right, Lurch is basically like Frankenstein, and You know, but they're crazy, right? They're like always guillotining dolls and stabbing each other, and you know, they got pet dragon. I think that's them, and stuff like that, right? And so the format for the show is that they're weird, but they live in regular a regular town. And so anyone who has to interact with them has to interact with the fact that they're kooky and they're spooky and they're the Addams family. So, what does this show do? It takes Wednesday Addams and it places her in a boarding school for spooky, kooky kids. Uh, there's sirens, there's gorgons, there's werewolves, there's vampires, right? And on top of that, they're also in a town that knows these things go to school there. And then on top of that, it throws in a Scooby-Doo mystery of someone. Are you dead, or someone is killing people related to one of the original founders of the town, and it turns out to be the school resides on land that once was owned by this family, and one of the family members wants the land back. That's the plot to this show. But there's no Addams family interacting with regular people. They did away with the one major part of the Addams family that made it funny. The actress that played Wednesday was okay, but it wasn't a very good Wednesday. Apparently they thought that Wednesday was basically a robot. And so she has almost no scenes where she shows any emotions of any kind. And I get that Wednesday delivered a lot of her lines deadpan, but it didn't mean she was emotionless. And so it was really bizarre for her to just be like, I mean, you couldn't even call him snarky because there was no snark to her delivery, and it was just deadpan. You know, I don't know. It wasn't great. The final episode was probably the best episode, and even that was meh. They did the Frozen thing. Spoilers, major spoilers. They did the Frozen thing where the bad guy doesn't act like the bad guy for the entire show until it's revealed that he's a bad guy. I don't like that. I didn't like it in Frozen. I don't like it in Wednesday. It's not a gotcha moment. It's not a, oh ho, we tricked you, audience. If you'd have just paid attention, there was nothing. Oh, nice. There was nothing to pay attention to. You could have never guessed that the bad guy, one of the bad guys, was a bad guy. You just couldn't. Like, yes, you would know that he was a monster because the monster looked like him. And I'm like, oh, look, that's that kid. The very first time I saw him and you see his hairdo, I'm just like, oh, that's that kid. And the CGI was terrible in the show for the most part. The thing looked fine. I don't know how much of that was CGI and how much it was like green screen. Um, I think the best storyline in the whole movie was her roommate was like this bubbly werewolf who couldn't turn into a werewolf. And that was the best storyline in the whole series, or the whole season. Was her eventually, being able to turn into a werewolf. The rest of it though was just it was so boring, honestly. And I just it's not fun when every person is spooky and kooky. And then they'd have like these weird throwaway plot lines that didn't mean anything or go anywhere. Like this whole thing where like your father killed somebody, and you know what it turned out to be? Not true, and they let him go. There was like no build up, no nothing to it. Really, I'm just like, this is so weird. Like, there's another one where like, uh, they got this girl, and she's one of the sirens, and she's like the queen bee of the school. And ooh, serrated mod. I feel like I have that on my thing already, but um and they're having like a family day, family weekend thing, and so her mother shows up, and she's like, my mother never shows up, and then she's like, I wouldn't have missed this for the world, dear. And then in the space of like 5 minutes, nothing to do with anything, the mother's suddenly like, the daughter's like, I don't want to be part of your cult. And the mother's like, don't talk about your stepfather that way. And the cult is dying, and I need you to come back to the cult and use your powers to help us deal with our loss of cult members. And you're gonna come back now, and or else I'm gonna tell everyone that you use your powers to get into this school, because you know that you didn't actually apply to get in here, and you just use your powers to get you into this school. And then she's like, no, I don't want to go back, but I'll help you during summer break if you let me stay here. Okay. And then that was it. Like, what did that have to do with anything? Nothing. No part of the series had anything to do with that as a plot line at all. So it was bizarre. The whole... Uh-oh. I didn't realize I was out of ammo. The whole series was that way. So I don't know. I don't know why they decided to go that way. I really thought it'd be different because Tim Burton is attached to it. Tim Burton directed some of the episodes. His name is plastered across it. And so, I'm expecting some Tim Burton-ness to the show. Nope. Not one bit. There's no Tim Burton-ness. There's no Addams Family-ness. There's none of that. It was just an angry teenage girl solves murders related to someone trying to seize back their family's land. Just yeah, even the fact that the kids were monsters had almost nothing to do with the show. I mean, yes, okay. The plot to get back the land involved resurrecting the original founder of the town to kill off all the kids at the school. All right. Yes, that was I guess air quotes spooky. But well, I don't know where it's at, but I'm pretty sure my truck is in there somewhere. But yeah, alright, well, with that, we ran the small things, lean to the light, and I will talk to you later.